Welcome to Charging the Agency Frontier. Today I'll be interviewing the Jason Swenk, a well-known agency coach who has sold a multi-million-dollar digital agency, has completed over 400 agency owner interviews. He manages a network of 40,000 agencies, and he's given over 100 agency keynotes, and those stats are probably all higher since the time that I read them. But if you're an agency owner, there's a good chance he's retargeting you on Facebook and you're seeing his face. But today we're going to have a conversation really around growing and scaling an agency. Which is definitely Jason's specialty. But Jason, before we jump in, dive right in, can you give us a little color on who you are, a little bit of background?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, Jason Swenk, I ran an agency for 12 years, grew it up to a big agency working with clients like Hitachi, LegalZoom, and Aflac, and eventually sold it and found myself in a place where all my old competitors were reaching out. Were like, hey, how'd you grow an agency? How'd you do this, this, and this? And started helping them out for free and realized there's a couple other people out there that were like me. So now what I do is I'm a media company where I just try to put out information that I wish I had, for agency owners so they can, create that freedom to do what they love in their agency and say no to the crappy stuff.
All right. Well, let's dive in. I'm excited because, obviously sales, marketing, business development, in the agency world, it's really a challenge, a pain point for just about every agency, particularly smaller agencies, mid-sized agencies as they're trying to find their footing. But for you personally, what's the biggest challenge that you see, when an agency is trying to scale?
Well, they don't have focus where they're going, right? So you got to think back at how most agency owners start out. They knew how to do something cool. Someone offered them money, and then they were like, oh, this is kind of nice. And they kept growing their business through word of mouth and referrals. And they were just taking on anything that would come to them. And they never really thought about what makes the perfect client and who should I actually work with and who should I actually target. So then their whole business is actually coming to them from the current network, which means you never can really scale up because anybody referring you business is always going to be at equal value or below. It's never above. Occasionally you might get those unicorns, and I'm sure I'll have some people be like, I got some unicorns, but you're a unicorn. And so they don't really have that clarity of where they're going or what they want to do. And then they start bringing people onto their team, and they don't know, like their team just keeps coming to them for all the answers because they never told people where they're going. They never had that clarity. Like, for example, if we're on a boat from New York to London, and after about 8 hours of driving the boat, I have to go get down from the wheelhouse, go in my cabin, go sleep. And I told everybody on the team that's manning the boat, if the boat changes course, wake me up, I'll fix it. Boat changes course every couple seconds. So until I can actually tell them where I'm actually going, we're going to London. And they were like, okay, cool. I'll make the course correction. It's at 76 degrees or whatever it is. And if they don't want to go to London, get off the freaking boat. And so if you have that clarity, you can actually give your team the power to say yes or no. You can say yes or no. And that's one of the biggest things I see a lot of agencies struggle with.
What do you think is, I totally agree. What do you think standing in the way of that clarity? Because for me, I've noticed in working with agencies that, when it comes to their own positioning, their own brand strategy, a lot of kind of formal components that they would advise their clients to go through, they haven't done themselves. They haven't done for their own business. And so there's that question mark of, who are we? What are we about? How are we differentiating in the marketplace? But do you think, what's the reason driving that? Is it lack of time? Is it prioritizing clients first? Is it something else? What's really driving that inability to tackle the problem?
Yeah, it's a number of different things, right? So if they're just starting out, they haven't done it as much, right? So they haven't tried everything at the buffet yet to figure out what they like or what they don't like, okay? And so if you haven't tried everything, it's kind of hard to be like, I'm going to go after this. But then I think then you get into a point where you started working with so many different types of people in so many different industries that you're like, well, which one should I pick? Like, I've done so much. I don't want to miss out. But you really got to kind of think about and say, what do I have a lot of passion in? What do I have a lot of knowledge in? And what would I do for free? Or which one would I have the most impact on the world at? Rather than saying, well, I have the most manufacturing clients, so I'm going to pick that as a niche and I'm going to go after them. Like, you have to like love what you're doing, right? Like, I love what I do. Like, I think of agency owners all the time. Like, it's not work. Like, it's just literally like, what can I create? What are they struggling with? Boom, 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 right? And it's just fun for me. It's like a puzzle piece. It's a game. It's Monopoly. And so you got to get to that point in order to do that. And what I also tell people is, you're only marketing to that niche. Okay. You still can take on work outside, as long as it falls into your criteria. But, I don't think without the clarity, you can't move on to positioning yourself. Like, are you going to say I'm tired of people writing the stupid ass blogs about how to pick an agency. And that's the content creation that they create. I'm like, no, like, it's the reason you're creating that stupid content is because you don't understand the people you're going after. Like, I want you to understand, what are they feeling? And then you can really start to scale your agency.
Love it. All right. Which is harder for agency owners? Is it growth, or is it scaling to meet the demands of growth? Is it new business, or is it operations? Is it executing?
I think it really depends on the person, right? If you're a natural born salesperson, you're going to not have any trouble with selling, right? But you're going to have trouble with operations and delivering. Case in point, I love my friends over at Digital Marketer. They've started many agencies in the past, and they're amazing at marketing, and they're really good at sales, but they never had the operations part right running an agency. So they had to keep closing those agencies down. Now, if you're a really good operator and you're really good at processes and that kind of stuff, and you hate people and you hate talking to people, right? Then you're going to have trouble with getting business. And so you got to look at kind of, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? And for the weakness, and work on the strength.
Got it. So we talked about positioning a bit and finding that clarity. Coming into 2020, there's been, I think, a lot of movement in terms of particularly small to mid-sized agencies that have spent time on their positioning and have made investment and are realizing the value of their positioning as it relates to the success of their agency. So I think there's been progress over the years in terms of that area. But with that comes even more competition. It comes even more agencies to compete with that have specializations and special sauce and differentiators that can win business. And so how does an agency compete in 2020 when, estimates are anywhere from 40, 60, 100,000 agencies in the United States? I mean, there's a lot of competition, and they're getting better at, essentially defining their positioning and being more narrow. So how do you compete with that?
Well, positioning yourself in just a regular niche is not, good enough. Okay. Because you got to think about, how are you positioning yourself in the right way? So most agencies will talk about, hey, we're the best agency in the world for automotive. And look at all our ADDIE awards, and look at all our people, and we're the most transparent agency out there. Like, that's what they're all saying, which is all bunch of horse crap.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're making all the focus on yourself. So let's picture this. Let's picture we're at a conference. I come up and I say, hey, Robby, I'm Jason. I am the best person in the world for helping agencies scale. And let me tell you about all the awards I had and all the successes I had and my whole team and all. You'd be like, jerk, get away from me.
Turn off. I was having this discussion with an agency search consultant, Michael Palma, yesterday about how he hated how agencies position themselves as experts. And, it's an interesting perspective. I was like, yeah, true. Like, sometimes it comes off in a way that's, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, there's even people in my business that says I'm the expert of the experts. I'm like, you're an idiot.
Right.
I'm like, you're not, because you got to think about, what's the story you're telling. Now, picture if I was at the conference, I said, hey, Robby, why'd you come to the conference? And is anybody I can connect you with? What's your biggest challenge? Right? What am I doing? I'm asking questions and I'm putting the focal point on you. I'm making you the hero in your story, right? Like, that's why I love like Donald Miller's stuff, because like we've done that for years and years. And then they came up with that cool methodology. I was like, exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's more about like, how can I position myself as that trusted advisor? How could I be Alfred and you be Batman? Because if I'm Batman, I make you Robin, and I don't think you dressed up as Robin for Halloween, did you? Like,
No.
like I was doing a speech.
Star-Lord, actually. Star-Lord, Quill from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I was doing a speech in New York in front of like 1,000 agencies, and one person stood up, said I dressed up as Robin. I'm like, oh well, we could talk about that afterwards.
Yeah.
So like going back to the positioning, so like you got to think about how can you position yourself as a trusted advisor. So here's another example that really irritates me or hurts your agency. So if you go to an agency and I say like, hey, I'm struggling with lead gen, I need help on Facebook and LinkedIn, and the agency comes back and says, look, we can help you, but we have 3 packages. We have platinum, gold, and silver. Which one do you want? I'm like, you're not a trusted advisor. You're literally like a buffet, like you're this, like when you go to a restaurant, and like especially the Mexican restaurants, they have huge menus.
Yeah.
And you get overwhelmed. You're like, I don't know what to eat. Versus you go to like a nicer upscale restaurant, it's like 4 things. You're like, oh, I don't like raw food, so let me go with the meat.
Right. Yeah. It's the thing that, not to self-promote, but with Agency Match, I mean, that's our big thing. It's like, we don't want it to be the Mexican menu or the Cheesecake Factory menu where there's so many options that there's decision-making paralysis. All right. From what you're seeing in the marketplace, how are agencies getting new business opportunities? What do you see that's working out there? From my perspective, as a matchmaker, going through the vetting process with hundreds of agencies, most rank themselves low on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of their sales, marketing, business development. Most aren't really doing anything. It's word of mouth marketing, which is code for nothing. And those that are doing things are kind of dabbling and trying a couple things at a time. And then the ones that seem to have success seem to have them in less predictable ways. They got ranked in a niche directory and it's sending them all their leads and they're relying on that one channel for all of their opportunities. Have you found anything that really consistently works and whether it's outbound, whether it's inbound, anything that agencies should be thinking about coming into the new year?
Yeah, I always tell everybody there's no such thing as a silver bullet. There's only no one can give you the silver bullet, but you can build your own silver bullet from all these different things. And so I always looked at like what works for agencies is you got to have kind of 3 channels. You have to have an inbound channel, you have to have an outbound channel, and you have to have a strategic partnership channel. Because if you're just relying everything on Facebook, I can promise you your business is going to be suffering next year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or if you go on like, hey, I'm going to go on this new platform, right? Like you have to be able to move around. Same thing on like most people don't rely on outbound, or they'll hire a company to do outbound for them. And then a lot of companies don't really look at the strategic partnership channel of going like, once I have my niche that I'm going after. So if I'm going after lawyers, all right, who else goes after lawyers? What associations, what technologies? What are the other competitors? Maybe I have a particular niche. Like there's a agency, one of our mastermind members, like they go after lawyers and they literally have their whole channel is strategic partnership or like a channel, and they have 100 different people referring them business. Now, this is not just word of mouth and referrals, like this is strategic, like, or George Bush would say strategery, right?
Right. Right.
Going after. But I think if you want to do one thing that can build all 3, it's doing a freaking podcast. When I was speaking in front of those 1,000 agency owners in New York a couple months ago, I asked everybody, I said, how many people have a podcast? 5 people stood up. I was blown away. I was like, you all, like, if you do not see the writing on the wall about the opportunity to create amazing content, to talk to your perfect prospect, to talk to your perfect partner and create like this relationship, you guys are crazy. You guys, you deserve to suffer.
Yeah, no, I love that you touched on that. I think podcasts are great, and you're right that they're still, percentage of agencies with the podcast is pretty low, but they're an amazing prospecting tool. I mean, if you're offering to interview somebody on your podcast, there's tremendous value in that, and that creates a relationship that can lead to new business. And so, in so many ways, from a new business perspective, as far as from a content thought leadership perspective, I mean, all those areas, it's going to be helpful. Now, Google is ranking podcasts and searches, and that's going to be helpful from an SEO perspective. So that's I like that podcast in 2020. That's the year.
Yeah, and you're able to talk to people that you would never be able to talk to. Like I've had Seth Godin on the show. I have Tony Hsieh. Like all these people that they would never talk to me for 45 minutes and let me just pick their brain. Like literally, because like think about like when people say, Jason, can I just pick your brain? You're like, you just want to get my information for free because you're too cheap to pay me. But on a podcast, you can pick my brain because like it's going out to the world. So,
all right, what's a good way to speed up the sales process and increase your win rate, your conversion rate?
Think about your offering. Stop going like you didn't go up to your significant other and ask them to marry you right away. And that's what agencies are doing. They're going, oh, like you want to buy this huge retainer, this $20,000, $100,000 a month retainer? Well, that's a huge commitment. There's a lot of risk in there. You haven't done the most important thing, trust, prove my value, right? Now, if you're a VaynerMedia and like people know what you're getting, or like a Gray or a Tribal or some of the biggest agencies in the world, then you can get away with that. But the problem is most of us are smaller and we look at the big guys and we try to model what they're doing, but it's actually a mistake. You should have modeled how they actually got there. And so if you think about how could I offer something to them to prove or to show them that they have a problem, to put a plan together and to prove my worth. And that's what I call my foot in the door offer. Like we always have an award for our mastermind members, whoever comes with the best foot in the door. And it's like, it could be an audit. Like I remember when I ran an agency, we would do cold calling and we'd close so many. Now, this doesn't work as good anymore, but we would call people that would say, we're spending over $10,000 a month in AdWords. And we'd be like, hey, Robby, I know you're spending over $10,000 a month in AdWords. It's a lot of money. And what we've found with people that spend over that amount, there's a lot of wasteful spending. We offer a service that we can look at that and make sure that you're spending in the right way and really maximize that. Is that something that you would like to chat with me about and have me do? We charge $2,500. We'd even do the pay-per-click. We outsourced that because we wanted the design. We wanted to charge, people are spending that much would spend over 100K on a website. So like, think of what's that easy in order to, get them to pay you, because once they pay you, they're 20 times more likely to pay you again if they had a good, interaction with you.
I love that. Now the appetizer, the classic appetizer. Love it. And then what's a way to make sure that you don't waste time with the wrong prospects?
So remember this, remember NBAT, okay? Think about what do they need? What's their budget? Are we talking to the authority? And is it the right timing? So let's talk about the need. That's the easiest one, right? Like make sure it matches up with your core service. Like stop doing stuff that's not even related. Like if they ask you to mow the lawn, it doesn't relate to you doing marketing. It's like you could screw that up. So that's easy. The budget, ask for the budget. I always love when I ask people, I'm like, how many people ask for the budget? 50% of the room goes up. I'm like, cool. Out of that 50%, how many get the budget every single time? Half the hands go down. So meaning a quarter of the agencies out there are actually educated with what the budget is. So they actually know, can I actually help this person out or not? And should I actually raise my prices? Because most of the time you're not going to lose a deal because you're too much. You're going to lose a deal because you're too low.
Yep.
I remember going in to a company I've never heard of before, like I rocked this conversation on the phone, went to their office, had this huge office, all these people, and they laughed at me when I told them the price. I went back to the office, I told all my employees, and they're like, well, who'd you meet with? I was like, Berkshire Hathaway. They're like, hey, dummy, that's one of the largest companies in the world. And then I asked them, why did we lose a deal? They were like, we're expecting 300,000 versus 20,000. And so the easiest way to get the budget is like, I'll do this with you, Robby. Like, hey, so Robby, what's your budget for the project?
$100,000.
All right, don't tell me the budget. Just say you don't have.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I don't have. I don't have a. Yeah, I'm playing the game. All right, yeah. I don't have a budget. My
see, this was not planned at all.
my CMO is not giving me a budget, Jason.
Awesome, Robby. I love working with people that don't have a budget, so I don't have to worry about money, and we can test out all kinds of cool things. And then you're going to
I have a budget.
Yeah, and then I'll be like, yeah, so you do have a budget, and here's what people do wrong. They go, well, what are you trying to stay around with? Are you trying to stay around the 1,000 mark, 5,000 mark? See, when you say a number, they're going to remember that number first. So I always like to tell people, remember the reverse auctioneer. So I would always start really, really high. I'd be like, hey, I just need to know some kind of range so I know if I can help you out or not, or if I need to recommend you to someone else. Are you trying to stay around $1 million, 800,000, 700,000, 50,000, 20,000? What is it? And then you'll get the budget almost every single time. The next is authority, right? And that. And the easiest way to determine this is saying, hey, Robby, I love the objectives that you have for this project. How does this align with the overall company objectives? And then you'd be like, I don't know. Well, cool. Who knows? Oh, Bob. Who's Bob? He's the CEO. Can we get Bob on the call? And then you can figure out the real authority. And then the timing, the last is timing. If they want this tomorrow, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like I always had a motto that there's no such thing as a bad agency client. There's only a bad prospect or a bad process. And if you let the bad prospect in, you deserve to be shot. You deserve to suffer if you do it over and over again.
All right. So I have 2 more questions left, and then I think we're at about half an hour. So I want to keep it succinct for audience. But how do you predict growth to meet demand?
Yeah, it's all about setting up your team in the right way. Look, your team is always going to be saying, I'm maxed out, right? And I can't handle more. But it's always look at the data. And the biggest mistake I made at our agency for many, many years was I didn't make people do time tracking, even if I wasn't charging them on an hourly basis, right? We were charging on a project or retainer, but I had no idea how much time it actually took for going into stuff. So if I could have people start tracking time, then I could figure out, all right, what's the utilization rate? And how much can these people actually handle? Or am I actually making money on these engagements or not? And the funny thing is when I actually started measuring, all of our time, I actually realized we were losing money on 60% of the engagements, 60%. So, looking at the data and time tracking is the easiest way.
And then finally, what question did I not ask that I should have asked?
I guess the thing is like one piece of advice I'll tell everybody is like, there's never a direct path straight to where you want to go. Like, for example, we had our digital agency experience not too long ago. And one of the activities we do is climb a mountain. And a lot of people rush up the mountain. So think about your agency, you're rushing up the mountain. You want to get to the summit. You want to get to the top. You want to be the king of the mountain. And you think selling your agency or being the number one in your industry is it. Well, the people that ran up the mountain, sure, they got up to the top of the mountain first. But there was one member that I was walking with, so I always want to make sure everybody gets up there and they don't get eaten by mountain lions or attacked by bears. So I'm walking with this person and we're going very slow. But what I realized was I actually enjoyed that more because I started recognizing things all around. And I started seeing stuff and enjoying stuff I wouldn't have seen if I rushed up it. And when I sold my agency, even though it took me 12 years to sell it, or like it didn't take me 12 years to sell it. I ran the agency, someone offered us good money and sold it. But I was always kind of trying to get to the next level and never really enjoying the journey. So I'll tell you, enjoy the journey. You'll see amazing things. And it's never a direct path. Sometimes you got to go up and down, switch backtrack, all that kind of stuff. It's all natural. There's nothing wrong with you.
Buckle up.
But just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and you'll do well.
Love that. Words of wisdom. So, and also, how can viewers get in touch with you? What's the easiest way what's your site URL? We'll throw up your site at the end of the segment, but any ways to contact you and reach out?
The easiest way is just go to jasonswenk.com, SWENK. I'm not related to Hillary, so just jasonswenk.com, and check out the podcast. Our podcast goes out twice a week, where we interview amazing people. You're going to be on the podcast, and then check out our videos. We have over 500 videos. I like to tell everybody we have probably around 1,300 pieces of free content just to help you and provide a resource I wish I had. So go check that out. And then if I can ever help out in any way, let me know.
Awesome. Jason, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks.